Once again, Sanderson has given us a secret novel, one of those books that he wrote in his free time just for the pure enjoyment in between all of his other busy writing and non-writing but famous author engagement schedule things. And in my opinion, these secret novels, Isles of the Emberdark included, show a different side, a side of Sanderson's writing personality that I think shows through in these secret novels. The ones that are not expected or promised, that he's just like, hey, I wrote a story for fun, here you go. I think this showed even in the secret novels from a couple of years ago that were regarded as the not as good ones. They still showed the sense of fun that Sanderson has in telling a story. I think that really shines through in Isles of the Emberdark. And one thing that I really enjoyed about it is that it is a little smaller scale. It's not the big epic fantasy with world-ending possibilities at the end that have to be overcome, fighting against evil. There's a little bit of that. There is Cosmere connectedness, but it's really more about the characters, which I really appreciated. So this one is very Cosmere connected. It is not meant to be read in isolation. There are a lot of references to other worlds, their magic systems, their technology. So you might be able to read it and enjoy it without having read other Cosmere works, just accepting that there will be characters in the world who know about other worlds and other technologies that you don't know about. But I do think this one was written for Cosmere fans who have more knowledge of the greater Cosmere, specifically Mistborn and Stormlight Archive, but other works as well. I think almost everything was referenced, and there's some characters in there that you might recognize from other works, other characters that are mentioned. So even if you are not completely caught up on the Cosmere and you want to give this one a try, there is one that is required reading. So much so that Sanderson included the novella Sixth of the Dusk as flashback chapters. Isles of the Emberdark starts 5 years after Sixth of the Dusk, the novella. Same characters, same world, the story is continuing from there, and Sanderson felt that it was so important to have read Sixth of the Dusk first. He didn't want fans to finally get their secret novel that they've been waiting for and open it and go, I was supposed to read something else first, that he just included it. Which was good for me because I felt like I was caught up on the Cosmere enough to enjoy a Cosmere connected book, and then that's one of the few that I have not read. I have it. I have the Arcanum Unbounded, but I haven't read everything in here yet. So knowing that Isles of the Emberdark follows Dusk, the main character from Sixth of the Dusk, if you have read the novella Sixth of the Dusk, you can either skip or skim the flashback chapters. And in my opinion, after having read Isles of the Emberdark, I think for the best enjoyment, it works better to read Sixth of the Dusk, then start Isles of the Emberdark. And go ahead and skip those Sixth of the Dusk chapters, the flashback chapters where it says 5 years ago. I felt like Sanderson that it was integral to understanding the story of Isles of the Emberdark. You really have to read it first. I think including it as flashbacks worked. I thought it was fine, but I think for overall enjoyment and flow of the story, they should be read in order. Sixth of the Dusk, then Isles of the Emberdark. So if you're watching this and you want to read it and haven't yet, that is my recommendation. I think the story will flow better that way. It felt a little broken up, the going back and forth. I appreciated having it there so that I was caught up and knew what was going on. But only having a 5-year difference sometimes felt like, wait, which time period am I in right now? So if you've read Sixth of the Dusk, you are familiar with the world, with some of the magic, the Aviar, the invested birds, and with the relationship between Dusk and Vathi, however you say that one. If you have not read Sixth of the Dusk and you're not familiar with the world yet, the story takes place on the world Dromanad. Again, hoping I'm saying it right. The culture of the people who live on this planet is very Polynesian inspired. The people live on groupings of islands. The main island, Patji, named for the god Patji, and so the trappers worship that island, which is where the Aviar come from. The trappers are the group of people who learn to go survive on this dangerous and deadly island and trap the birds, which are invested and have powers, and they can take them back so people who don't ever go to the dangerous islands can have their own AVR. And like on any other invested planet in the Cosmere, there is not just one power or one flavor of magic. Different birds have different powers. One of Dusk's birds has the ability to show him his death. So anytime that Dusk would go into a situation where he would die, his bird can show him a vision of that. That is super helpful as a trapper who works on Patchy because there are so many deadly, dangerous things there. It gives him an advantage, almost an unfair advantage. And then his other AVR is able to like block or shield his mind. Some of the dangerous, deadly things are creatures who hunt by sensing a mind. So one of his birds can block that to try to keep him safe. I came into reading Isles of the Emberdark straight from Jurassic Park, or very shortly off of Jurassic Park. It gave me a lot of the same feelings. There's someone who knows how to live on this deadly island, and then there's this corporation who wants to come in and try to make money off the island. I actually, as I was reading, felt a lot of either purposeful or accidental influences that Sanderson put in there, or for me, my brain was just creating connections between this story and other stories that I have taken in. Some of the connections that I was making, and I won't say which parts of the story I made these connections with because I think it's fun for you reading the book to make your own connections to stories that you have read. For me, I was getting vibes of Crocodile Dundee, Jurassic Park, Star Trek, Star Wars, Firefly, Ghostbusters, Pirates of the Caribbean, Treasure Planet. There were just so many little things that reminded me of other stories. I really enjoyed that feeling. Nothing super obvious. Maybe the one scene that reminded me of Ghostbusters. That one seemed a little more obvious. So the main story of Isles of the Emberdark starts 5 years after Six of the Dusk, but there are two very separate viewpoints going on. So Dusk's storyline is what I would consider the main one, especially coming off of Sixth of the Dusk. And coming into his personal story, the world is a different place for him now. Society is progressing. His world doesn't need trappers anymore. All of his life that he spent training and learning to survive on Patchy and trap there is starting to feel like it doesn't matter. He doesn't have to do that anymore. His kind, the trappers, are like a dying breed. They go and tell stories of what life used to be like. They try to share the knowledge from their ancestors so it won't be lost. But Dusk is feeling a little lost. He's not sure what to do with himself now, what direction he should go in life. Everything he's done up to now, leading up to this point where Isles of the Emberdark starts, is like meaningless now. Or he is still trying to find meaning or wonder what meaning he can find in the future. But one of those Cosmere connections is that his world is being visited by ones above, which, if you're familiar with the Cosmere, you can recognize as future Scadrians. People from Scadrial, aka the Mistborn series. In the preface, Sanderson also warns that there might be some future Cosmere, like minor spoilers. I didn't feel like it was so much spoilers as like you can see what direction things are going in. It feels like it takes place after the first Stormlight Archive series, maybe around the time of the Sunlit Man, maybe even a little farther in the future. So there's a lot more, not just Cosmere connectedness for us as the readers, but in world, there's more like visiting between people and they're more aware of each other. So ones above have come to visit, and there is something very mysterious about Dusk's world. For one, the AVR, invested birds on a planet where supposedly there is no shard or has not been one. So there is that mystery. Both to the people on-world, only the trappers know how the AVR get their powers, and to the people off-world, that is a huge mystery. Where are they getting their power? And for people off-world, people of the greater Cosmere, they suspect that Dromonad might have a perpendicularity, which, if you're aware of greater Cosmere things, that is like the magical pool / portal where people can go through and get through the cognitive realm aka Shadesmar, to get to other worlds. It makes interplanetary travel possible without having to actually go through space, which I will get to when I get to the other main character point of view story. So there are mysteries about Dromonad that are making it very interesting to the ones above. People from other worlds. They're looking at Dromonad going, there is something valuable there and we want it. But the people of Dromonad are trying to stay independent. The ones above are coming in and offering all this technological advancement in exchange for AVR. And they are really feeling like the ones above are trying to just gain control of them. They're going to come under their thumb, under their leadership, their government structure. They're going to lose who they are as a people, and that's not what they want. So they keep stalling. They keep trying to come up with reasons to not accept things yet. They'd like to progress technologically on their own instead of just accepting gifts. But the ones above are putting on so much pressure, they're not sure that they'll be able to say no for much longer. So we follow Dusk as he simultaneously is trying to find personal meaning in his life while also helping his friend Vathi and his world as they enter this new era. So Dusk, the character, I really like his characterization. He is where I was getting the Crocodile Dundee vibes. If Crocodile Dundee was from Hawaii, Dusk is very devout. He fully believes not just in the existence of the god Pachi, but that Pachi pays attention to him as a person, that Dusk gets personal attention from his god, and that God is preparing Dusk for what is ahead of him. He is very firmly rooted in that belief. So while he's struggling with what does my life mean now, he still strongly believes that there is some meaning, he just has to find it, and that Pachi will help him along the way. He is gruff, he is very silent and uncommunicative, which his friend Vathi is trying to work on him with. I really liked that relationship, both in the Sixth of the Dusk novella as their relationship is just starting and getting set up, and then how it has progressed into Isles of the Emberdark. I enjoyed seeing how their relationship developed, the trust that they have for each other, how Vathi kind of represents the progress that is happening in the world, and Dusk, who is really stuck in his ways. He loves the old ways, he respects and reveres them. He can see progress coming, and it's not that he hates progress. He knows that it will happen. He's trying to accept it. And so it's more like he's just not fighting against progress. He values truth, even if it's unpleasant to hear, which helps build his connections with the other main character. And the other thing I have on my notes that I really admired about his characterization was that he is so confident in his abilities. He has spent his whole life training to survive dangerous situations, and so he knows that he can. There are very few times where he doubts that he'll be able to do what he's trying to do. He just needs to persevere, and he can do it. It was also nice to read a story with older main characters. Dusk is 43. And the other character, who I'm getting to next, is 80-something, 87 maybe. That main character is Starling, and hers is the viewpoint that gives me the more like sci-fi, Star Trek, Star Wars, Firefly feel from this story. It feels almost like a mashup of a fantasy story on this side and a sci-fi story on this side, and then they are kind of coming together throughout the book. And while I enjoyed both point of view sides of the story, it did make it feel like I was at times just reading two separate books and kind of jumping between like, okay, I'm reading this book and I'm gonna put it down, and I'm gonna go read this book and then put that one down. And it felt like it took a long time for them to finally come together, which was fine. And that might be where reading Sixth of the Dusk first is helpful, because then the portion where you start Isles of the Emberdark and those two point of view characters don't feel like they take as long to come together. I don't know. I read it as laid out by Sanderson, so I don't know if that would help with that feeling. So Starling is a dragon. She's not a very good dragon, but she's a very good human. In the Cosmere, a dragon can also take human form. So when they are in human form, they are still fully a dragon with all their draconic powers. Starling is actually the one we start with 57 years ago. We get to see her very first transformation into a dragon. It's like celebratory, woohoo, she made it. But then when we get to the modern present era of the story, she has done something that gains her a certain type of punishment. And so she spends the story in her human form, which probably works way better for a story like this because they are, it feels like a space exploration story. They have a ship, they have a crew. It's like the ragtag crew of misfits, very Firefly-esque, or maybe Battlestar Galactica. That's one I haven't watched, so I'm not as familiar. But the crew is made up of people from different worlds. They're all very different from each other, and they're having to be able to get along and trust each other. Starling, you really like from the very beginning because of her obvious care for her crew. She kind of reminded me of Captain Catherine Janeway from the USS Voyager. Once they get thrown into the Delta Quadrant and it's just her taking care of her crew. They're her responsibility. She is on it. Or like Mal Reynolds from Firefly. The crew is your family now. We look out for each other. Her crew doesn't have a nice new, very modern ship. They're flying kind of a hunk of junk pieced together with old parts. And instead of traveling through space, they are traveling through the cognitive realm, Shadesmar. And then this story takes place in a lot of what's known as the Unsea or the Emberdark. Places in Shadesmar that are mostly unexplored and in some places nearly impossible to navigate. That's kind of a big theme. Dusk's people are navigators and they got to Dromonad somehow. Not with space travel. That's like a big thing that Dusk is trying to figure out. And Starling and her crew, even with all the modern technology possible, it's still really difficult to navigate in certain parts of Shadesmar. And for the greater Cosmere, any place, any world with a perpendicularity is going to be highly valuable. Traveling from perpendicularity through Shadesmar to another perpendicularity cuts down travel times, travel costs. The distances are generally far shorter than going through the physical realm in space. So if a new perpendicularity were discovered, that planet would probably be fought over by the greater powers in the Cosmere. And if someone were to find a real, authentic map to such a place, that would be a great treasure indeed. The map being a treasure that would lead to more treasure. And if Captain Starling were to have such a map and a ship and a willing crew, that could make for some fun times. But also a very dangerous time. The greater powers in the Cosmere are pretty sure there's a perpendicularity. They just need to find it. So it's like this race to see who can find it first. So that's kind of what adds that dangerous element. If you think you know where it is, you can't tell anybody that you think you know where it is. So we have Dromonad with magical birds, possible perpendicularity, attention of greater powers of the Cosmere coming onto it, and a character who is trying to help his world survive those greater powers. Then we have the dragon who's getting her crew together to race to follow their treasure map to try to find this power. And it felt so separate, but also there was like this feeling of inevitability that you know they're going to come together at some point. It just felt like it took a long time. And this one didn't feel like it had that Sanderlanche of that last portion of the book, just action-packed, go, 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 everything is happening. But it did feel like all those little threads that were being woven in came together very satisfyingly. So setup, 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 these two separate points of view coming together, and finally. Sometimes the Sanderlanche feels a little chaotic. This didn't feel chaotic, it just felt like, I knew that would happen. And probably felt more satisfying at the end when all these things come together if you are more aware of greater Cosmere things. So again, I think you could read it maybe without awareness of other Cosmere worlds, but it really adds to the understanding and the enjoyment. Nothing in this book made me mad, like Rhythm of War and Wind of Truth. Those books had things that just frustrated me. This one did not. I just found myself fully enjoying the story. I really enjoyed the Polynesian influence, and I felt like it was very respectfully done, which is not surprising if you know Sanderson. He often gets sensitivity readers, and he likes to get real people to talk to get their experiences before just writing and making up stuff or using stereotypes or whatever. I don't know that he always used to write that way, but especially starting in the Stormlight Archives, he wanted to be very accurate and respectful. And I think that comes through in the way that the culture on Dromonad was written. As per usual with the Secret Project novels, Sanderson went to find artists that he thought would be perfect for the story. I will link both of the artists that worked on Isles of the Emberdark. I highly encourage you to check them out. I'll also add a link to the book, which is only in digital format right now. The physical book will come out later, possibly early next year. It just kind of depends on how fast it takes to get things bound and printed and out. For now, you can take in electronic versions of the story. I am kind of missing holding up a book as I talk about it, which is what I usually do. So I'll link the book, I'll link my Instagram, my Patreon. Thank you, patrons. I appreciate you guys a lot. And happy reading. Bye.